Good evening. Welcome to the NSS Award Ceremony at the ISDC 96 here in New York City. My name is Zsidisin. Again, I'm the chairman of this conference. And I'm just going to launch right into this. I'm proud to kick off the award ceremony by presenting Robert Zubrin, chairman of the executive committee of the International Space Society, and the developer of the Mars Direct concept. I was going to show us the NSS slideshow, or the video version, to kick off our award ceremony. Bob, you want a microphone?
Can people hear me?
You'll need it, Bob.
I'll need it? Okay, I'll need it. By the way, David, you can, oh, very good.
I hope he's going to do it.
I've given this talk before in this conference, and I apologize if you've heard it before, but I guess people felt it was important enough that we would do an abbreviated version of it again. What I'm going to talk about is what we hope to do with the National Space Society over the coming year and beyond. Okay? We're going to launch a campaign to build a pro-space grassroots movement in this country, to do exactly what we've always said we wanted to do. Okay? And the way we're going to do it is we're going to do it on the ground. We're going to do it by having hundreds of people like you, going out and giving talks to anyone who's willing to listen. To Rotary clubs, high school classes, to political clubs, Boy Scout troops, to old age homes, to Shriners, to professional societies, okay, to any audience that you can get to invite to. What we've done to enable you to do this is we prepared a slideshow, which I'm going to give you in a minute. And once again, the idea of this talk is not to entertain you or inspire you, or even to educate you with these images, although those are all fine things. The idea of this talk is to basically give you one example of how this can be presented, and then get you to get a copy of the slideshow, which is on sale in the back of the room on that table over there. David Brandt's got it, $25. Okay? And then when you give this talk, basically, if you can inspire a few people by running up the pro-space flag, and they come up to you at the end of your talk, the message to them is join us. The message to them is for them to do what you are doing, for them to get a copy of the slideshow and give the talk themselves. Or, failing that, if they're not quite prepared to take that step, you give them a petition. We've printed a petition, pro-space petition, which is in the Ad Astra, that is coming out right now in May. And you should make photocopies of this to give out. Okay? Or we also have 10,000 extra copies of this issue of Ad Astra, which is a special issue, which is basically an informal platform of the National Space Society, which renders, through a collection of articles, the full suite of the vision of creating a spacefaring civilization, from opening up the road to orbit with cheap access, to what we can do in Earth orbit, space business parks, to what we can do on the moon, on Mars, the asteroids, and beyond, and what space means for technology and education, and why we need an open space frontier if we're going to have a dynamic society. So, now, further introduction, I'll just give the talk. I'll have the first slide. I'm here to talk to you about the campaign, the National Space Society, to open the space frontier. Next slide. Here we are in September 1962. This is John F. Kennedy talking to Rice University. Okay. It's a famous speech. We choose to go to the moon. We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard. Because that goal will serve to organize and measure the best of our energies and skills. Because that challenge is one that we are unwilling to postpone, and one which we intend to win. It is in some measure an act of faith and vision, for we do not know what benefits await us. But space is there, and we are going to climb it. and the moon and the planets are there, and new hopes for knowledge and peace are there. And therefore, as we set sail, we ask God's blessing on the most hazardous and dangerous and greatest adventure on which man has ever embarked. That was the spirit of Apollo. That's the spirit of real presidential leadership. This, by the way, was a campaign speech. This is given after Labor Day in an election year. Okay, quite a big difference from, you know, ladies and gentlemen, let me show you a way to save you 15% on your health care, or 4.3 cents on your gas tax, or vote for me, it's my turn. This is really the spirit that made America, and this is what we need to have again. But in any case, this is what we had. And as a result, next slide, 7 years later, we were there. In the space of 7 years, when Kennedy gave that speech, John Glenn had recently flown around the world 4.5 hours in space, okay, in a tiny capsule. 7 years, we developed multi-stage heavy-lift launch vehicles, in-space life support, spacesuits, in-space rendezvous, in-space navigation, soft landing systems, re-entry systems, you name it. We developed everything needed to go to the moon, and in fact stay on the moon if we wanted to, and we developed about 85% of what we need to go to Mars. And we did it. We went there again and again, 6 times, but then we gave up, and what was probably one of the most historic failures of leadership in the history of this country, or perhaps any country, we gave up an entire world that was ours. It's like Columbus coming back from the New World and the Spanish monarch saying, so what, let's burn the fleet. So we destroyed that capability. Now, we didn't destroy everything. Next slide. We built something else, the space shuttle. With the space shuttle, we've flown various missions of a couple of weeks duration in space and shorter, and launched some extremely exciting payloads like the Hubble Space Telescope. And next slide. And we should be able to build a space station, in which a certain amount of orbital research will be able to occur. However, it's got to be recognized, this country had a space station in 1973, and one with more living quarters aboard it than the space station that we're currently building. And basically, in a sense, well, we retreated, and we retreated a certain distance, and since then we've been able to stand still at a level below that which we were in 1971. Now, one of the reasons for this is the shuttle was supposed to open the road to space by providing cheap access to orbit. And while it provided access to orbit, and fairly safe access to orbit, it did not provide cheap access to orbit. This is an incredibly complicated system that is only partially reusable, quite difficult to reintegrate after each flight. Next slide. But there is actually a move right now to create vehicles that do have this prospect of being fully reusable, single-stage orbit vehicles. What you're seeing here is a photograph, not a painting, of a vehicle called the DCX, which is a prototype of a vehicle that, if it's evolved further technologically, could be able to actually do completely reusable single-stage orbit flight. This is a test in the New Mexico desert. DCX is subscale and it's sub-performance, but it's a prototype for vehicles like this next chart. The X-33. What you're seeing here are 3 different designs for the X-33. There's a variety of ways you can skin this cat. We're looking at the Rockwell design, the McDonnell Douglas design, the black one in the center, which is an upgrade of the DCX, and on the left, the Lockheed Martin design. And in fact, there's not too much doubt that single-stage orbit flight is possible, and in fact, probably all these would work, and it's a question of one might be cheaper to operate or have superior payload than the other. But the point is, this is a program that has been launched by the government, and which NASA is asking $900 million to fund, and it's an extremely important one because it's the main thing moving right now that can change the situation of opening up a cheap road to space, opening up, not with these vehicles, but with their follow-ons, access to space as routine someday as access to the air is now. And next chart. And if that can be done, the sorts of things you can do in space are incredible. This is a depiction here of solar power satellites. solar power is more available in space than on the Earth because you're not blocked by the atmosphere or clouds or rain. There are certain orbits you can be in where you can have sunlight virtually 24 hours a day. But the notion that you can generate power in space using today's cost of lift to orbit and beam it down to Earth, you can actually beam electric power with radio, is ludicrous. This costs $10,000 a pound to lift this mass to space, and this is simply not happening. But if you could reduce space travel to the cost of air travel, it's conceivable that it could be possible, and then you could build enormous power generators in space, which would not only supplement your power grid, but would make power available anywhere in the world, including in the third world, where the infrastructure to provide power at all simply doesn't exist, and therefore make possible a decent standard of living for billions of people who currently do not have access to it. Next slide. But there's more that we can do in space than just generate power. This is the moon, our lost world. Next slide. And this is a slide that's out of order that should precede the solar power satellites. This is a space business park that could be built on orbit probably a lot sooner than solar power satellites, where you could develop new drugs and all sorts of products that could be developed in microgravity. Now, a lot of people are skeptical of that claim because it's a claim that's been made and overblown in the past. But, in fact, next slide, to a certain extent, it's already been done. It's just not well publicized. These are crystals. In zero gravity, you can grow crystals in much more perfect form than you can in a gravity environment. The ones on the right were grown in space, the ones on the left were grown on Earth. And you can see the more or less perfect geometric form of the ones on the right. Now, as a result of this, the superior form of these crystals allow them to be analyzed to much greater detail than the imperfect crystals on the left. And this allowed scientists to develop a form of insulin that will actually last twice as long in the human bloodstream as the state-of-the-art. And this product is, in fact, being developed to be licensed on Earth right now, and it will be worth revenues of hundreds of millions, if not a few $billion. And now, you see, you don't with current launch prices, you can't manufacture things in space. That's really out of the question. But you can do certain experiments there that are of enormous commercial value and that can lead to the manufacturing of new and very exciting products on the Earth. Next slide. But to return to the moon, it's time to return to the moon, and this time to stay. We went there 6 times, played a little golf, it's a split. There's a lot more to be done on the moon than that. Next chart. Okay. For one thing, the moon is a location on which you could set up superb, incredible optical observatories, namely what are called optical interferometers. People may be familiar with the radio interferometer that exists right now in Socorro, New Mexico, where they have an array of radio telescopes spread across the desert, about 25 miles of desert, and they're coordinated by computer. And as a result, they're able to synthesize the same quality image that you would be able to get if you had a single radio telescope that was 25 miles in diameter, which would be a structure vastly too huge to be built. Okay? And on the moon, however, we could actually do the same trick in the optical. And since the moon is a couple of thousand kilometers in diameter, you can actually, in principle, create the equivalent of an optical telescope with a diameter of 1,000 kilometers. If you have an instrument like that, you'd be able to image Earth-like planets at distances of 100 light years, a distance within which there's something like 1 million stars in stellar systems to be explored. What that means is that we could explore with this instrument 1 million solar systems with about the same degree of knowledge as we had of the Earth solar system prior to 1957. Now, obviously there were limits to our knowledge of interplanetary exploration by telescope alone, but we knew a lot about Mars and Jupiter and Saturn in 1957 with our telescopes, and to be able to explore 1 million other solar systems with the same degree of fidelity would be incredible. But you could do, now you say, well, okay, that'd be very interesting, but what else, what's so practical about this? Well, for one thing, you'd also be able to do deep space imaging into the edge of the universe and into the center of cosmic phenomena, of black holes and other exotic things. And, well, what's so important about that? Well, the thing that's so important about that is that the universe is the greatest laboratory there is. It's the most incredible physical laboratory there is, because it is so vast with such powerful forces and such enormous scales available that there's physical processes that occur on the cosmic scale that are not ordinarily to be seen in the lab on Earth. And in fact, for that reason, historically, astronomy has led the advance of physics. We got our knowledge of the laws of gravity and inertia from astronomy. That led to Newtonian physics, which led to the Industrial Revolution. We first discovered nuclear fusion on the sun. Okay? And without a doubt, there are new fundamental discoveries in physics waiting to be made by astronomers, provided they're equipped with instruments that take them beyond what they can do now. Now, you discover a new law of physics, okay? And there are new laws of physics waiting out there to be discovered, because the laws of physics as they're currently constructed are inconsistent. They say that matter energy cannot be created, and yet it certainly was. Or it wouldn't be here. So you're talking about tremendous advances in humanity's power to manipulate nature and advance the human condition. And that's one of the benefits you can get from the moon. Not only spiritual, but practical. Next slide. And there are other things you can do. There's an element on the moon, or rather an isotope, called helium-3. It's an isotope of helium, which makes the ideal fuel for use in a thermonuclear fusion reactor. For all practical purposes, it does not exist on Earth. It does exist in the atmospheres of the gas giants in the outer solar system on Jupiter and Saturn. The moon's a lot closer than them. And it is possible that once we develop fusion reactors, that this material extracted from lunar soil would be the fuel that would power them. And this would provide us with vast amounts of cheap and also essentially non-polluting power for use on Earth. Next chart. But the moon is hardly the limit here. There's Mars. Mars, people don't understand Mars very well, because people look at Mars when they see the sky and they think it's a red dot, a point of light in the sky. It is not. Mars is a world. It is a planet with a surface area equal in size to all the continents of the Earth combined. Asia, Africa, North and South America, Australia, Antarctica, the rest. With a complex geologic history, which is created, and it has on it all the minerals, all the elements that are needed to support both life and human civilization. And it's a target for both exploration and colonization. Next chart. Contrary to what some people have said, we're not that far away from Mars. We developed 85% of the technology needed to get to Mars in Apollo, and it's very clear that if the United States wanted to, we could have people on Mars within 10 years of either now or whenever you turn on the program, especially if you do it right, if you do it with a live-off-the-land approach. The Martian atmosphere contains everything you need to create rocket fuel and oxygen. So the way you do this mission, if you want to do it right, is you shoot out to Mars your Earth return vehicle, shown on the right, with fuel tanks empty, so it can be shot out to Mars with a single booster launch. Have it make its propellant by the processes in those equations on the chart. And then after that's done, you shoot out the astronauts in a tuna can habitat shown there. They land on Mars, they live on Mars, they explore Mars, they prospect Mars, and when they're done, they can get in that Earth return vehicle and go home. And every mission you do in this way leaves behind a habitat on Mars, gradually building to the development of a significant base. Why do you want a base on Mars? Next slide. You want a base on Mars in order to develop the means of mastery of the raw materials of Mars to support life and civilization. The processes required to make fuel and oxygen on Mars are elementary, but all the raw materials are there to go way beyond that, to extract water from the soil, to grow crops, to make ceramics, glasses, plastics, metals, wires, tubes, habitats. And if you can do that, see, what determines what is a resource or not is the question of what's up here in your mind, of the ingenuity that you bring into problems. Uranium was not a resource until we developed the technology. Coal was not a resource until people developed the technology. Well, Mars has on all the materials that you need to turn into resources, provided you can develop the technology. And if you do, Mars becomes habitable, and it becomes a place where we can establish a new branch of human civilization. Next chart. And beyond that, well, there's a lot beyond that, because Mars is a cold and arid planet today. There's no liquid water on the surface of Mars. But there was once. In fact, we've got orbital imagery of Mars, which shows water erosion features on the surface of Mars. And there was once rivers on Mars. They're dry now. Okay, there was once lakes on Mars, they're dry now, and there was once even a polar ocean on Mars, which is dry now. It's all permafrost in the soil. But the reason why there wasn't liquid water at a time in the Mars' first billion years is that Mars at that time had a thick CO2 atmosphere, which gave an extremely strong greenhouse effect, strong enough to warm the planet for liquid water. Now, over time, some of that came out of the oxygenous carbonate rock, and the rest became absorbed into the soil as the temperature dropped. The greenhouse effect went away, the planet froze. But in fact, if we can establish humanity on Mars, it will eventually become possible to reverse that process. If we go to Mars and produce in large quantities strong greenhouse gases, we can warm the planet, bring the CO2 out of the soil, which will warm the planet even more, and that'll melt the water out of the permafrost. This is known as terraforming, and you can actually create a Mars in which there's liquid water on the surface again. Now, we have a real long time before anybody able to breathe that atmosphere. It's going to be mostly CO2. But really, within the 21st century, it would be possible to create a Mars in which plant life can spread on the surface, and then gradually, over time, put oxygen in the atmosphere. But what we'd be doing is creating a new biosphere, bringing a new world to life, and making it vastly more habitable right from the start. Because if you think of the atmosphere, even with CO2, you won't need to wear spacesuits anymore. You'll be able to build huge inflatable habitats because there's no pressure differential between the inside and the outside. And the dome cities of science fiction could become a reality. Next chart. Now, people have heard a lot recently about asteroids killing the dinosaurs. And this is essentially as verifiable as any scientific theory can be at this point. We have found the impact crater. It's in Mexico. These animals were as dominant on the Earth in their day as human beings are today, and they were wiped out by an asteroidal impact. And there's plenty of evidence that other mass extinctions occurred at various other times in the history of this planet, also by asteroidal impact. And the lesson of this is that your true environment that we live in is not the Earth. Species can survive for a certain amount of time on the Earth if they can master the environment of the Earth. But the true environment in the longer haul is the solar system. And unless you can master that environment, you're not going to survive indefinitely. And so, in other words, unless we develop the kind of spacefaring capabilities that are required to deflect asteroids, sooner or later, we're going to get it. Just a few years ago, an asteroid actually flew between the Earth and the Moon. It's a near miss. A small sub-asteroidal body hit the Pacific Ocean in 1993, generating as much energy as a small atomic bomb. No one was there to experience it, but we imaged it from orbit. And a similar blast hit Siberia in 1906, I believe. What? 1908. And had that arrived at Earth 4 hours earlier, it would have hit European Russia with hundreds of thousands of casualties. So if we're serious about protecting ourselves, if we're serious about being able to control the environment that determines our lives, we've got to develop these kinds of spacefaring capabilities. Next. But there's more to these asteroids than simply a threat to be avoided. The asteroids potentially can be a source of incredible amounts of wealth. The typical asteroid, we know what the material many of these are made out of because of the meteoritic fragments that we've recovered, are composed of metals, including strategic metals like cobalt and chromium and so forth, and as well as platinum group metals in ores over 10 times more pure than the best terrestrial ores. And if we can develop spacefaring capabilities, then people can mine this stuff and generate new sources of wealth for humanity. Next slide. And beyond the asteroids is the outer solar system. Vast, with giant planets, with many moons of planetary size going around them. Now, these things are out of our range now, but if you think about it, if we decide to settle Mars, if we start operating in the asteroid belt, people are going to want to advance space transportation technologies that exist. There'll be a reason for them to do so. It's just as Columbus sailed the Atlantic Ocean with ships, 2 of which were designed for the Mediterranean and 1 for the North Sea coastal trade. There was no reason to develop an Atlantic-capable ship in his world. But once they discovered what was across the Atlantic and created a reason to go across the Atlantic, naval architecture was advanced, and we got 3-masted caravels and glitter ships and steamboats, Boeing 747s, and thus it can be in space, and thus the same technologies that make access to Mars and places like that increasingly routine will make possible adventures into the outer solar system. where there's just incredible, vast sources of wealth, and as Kennedy put it, new hope to be found. In particular, the atmospheres of the gas giants. There's enough helium-3 to power human civilization, essentially for the indefinite future, even with continued exponential growth in population and living standards. Provided we go outside of our shell, there are no limits to growth. Next chart. And the same technologies that open up the outer solar system will open the path to the stars. Next chart. But you don't have to wait until the far future to get benefits from all this. We've already gotten plenty, including the whole computer revolution, as well as many new materials that go into products such as corrosion-free, durable braces, and UV-resistant glasses, and medical diagnostic equipment, and so forth. And in fact, there's been a lot of studies done, for instance, by Chase Econometrics, that show for every dollar they've spent on NASA, particularly in Apollo, was a $7 return to the economy. Next chart. And you don't have to have a study by Chase Econometrics to make it very apparent the power that the exploration of space has towards exciting human minds, exciting children to develop their minds. Okay? Perhaps they think they're going to be astronauts, perhaps they think they're going to be astronautical engineers, and very few of them actually do. People could divert in other ways, but they've still gotten that education, and they've created that capability, which is the thing that ultimately drives forward the economy and benefits all of us. Next chart. So the problem is, however, that this future and these advantages and this potential is not currently being perceived by our leadership in Washington. Our leadership in Washington currently is doing a slow-motion version of what the Nixon administration did when it scrapped our programs after Apollo in 1972, when it burned the fleet. And we're currently seeing a decline in U.S. space spending on the order of 5 to 10% a year, and basically the phasing out of this whole future of our civilization, and this has got to be turned around. And therefore, we're starting a campaign called Open the Space Frontier. And here's our program. 3 points. Number 1, the United States must declare it a national priority to establish permanent human settlements on the Moon and Mars. We need a space program that goes somewhere. Number 2, the United States government must begin a space technology initiative to develop the reusable launch vehicles and also other technologies, such as the ability to use space resources and needed to open this space to human settlement on an economical basis. That as we push out now with what we have now, but we develop the technologies to make it ever cheaper and make it sustainable. Point 3, very important. The U.S. government should mobilize the genius of the free enterprise system by posting a series of prizes private organizations making breakthrough accomplishments in space. And here, of course, we have a picture not of something having to do with space, but Charles Lindbergh. Lindbergh did not fly the Atlantic for a government program. He flew the Atlantic to win a prize. And many of the advances in aviation that took place in the 1920s and 30s that brought aviation out of its extremely primitive stage it was in even after World War I, up to the age of viable commercial air flight, were done on the basis of a series of accomplishments done to win prizes. The same can be done in space. And the advantage here is you really mobilize a great deal of creativity in this sort of competitive endeavor. You get the bureaucracy out of the way and you get a lot done. And while we shouldn't eliminate our space program that we have now in favor of this, we should supplement it with this in order to get new resources, new blood, and new ideas into the system. Because there's a lot of new tricks, no doubt, that can be discovered. So what we're doing is we're asking you to be part of this. We're asking you to join this campaign. We've got these 3 points written out in the form of a petition. I want you to circulate it. Get 10 signatures, mail it in. Or do more. Photocopy and get a lot of signatures. Or better yet, do what I'm doing, which is get a copy of the slideshow and start talking to other people. Because I can't do this by myself. And the people that are doing it now can't do it by themselves. We need thousands of people doing this. If you want to see this kind of future instead of one of stagnation, then you should join us in doing this. Next chart. Now, to conclude with a thought, okay, I mean, this is a picture of Western pioneers. There's a quote from a historian named Walter Prescott Webb: "The people are going to miss the frontier more than words can express. For 4 centuries they heard its call, listened to its promises, and bet their lives and fortunes on its outcome. It calls no more." Now, Webb was a historian, and he wrote a whole book called The Great Frontier that quote is from, in which he showed in enormous detail how the whole character of America, and even Western civilization more broadly, as a dynamic society committed to change, is due to the existence of an open frontier that was opened up by the Age of Discovery and most emphatically dominating the history of the United States up till the opening of the 20th century. Because what an open frontier is, it's a challenge and it's freedom. It's a challenge because your old ways of doing things are never adequate under the new conditions of the frontier. But it's also an unregulated environment where you are not only forced to, but you are free to come up with new solutions, both technological and social. Okay? America became the country of gadgeteers because it was a country with an incredible labor shortage imposed on it by the open frontier. The labor shortage even in the East, because the factory worker could always go west. It was also a country of social innovation because of the labor shortage on the frontier. Example, it is not today considered unusual for a woman to be a school teacher, but women were not always school teachers. Women became school teachers in the one-room schoolhouses of the American frontier. Because there, because of the tremendous labor shortage, the girl could read her cipher. There was no one to say, well, she can't do this because she's this. So go on in, do it. And then that custom, proven on the frontier, spread east during the labor shortage of the Civil War. Well, similarly in space, it'll be the same way. If we establish human settlements on Mars, there's going to be nothing dearer there than human labor power. And you're going to want to find ways of doing things. You're going to want to not exclude people from doing things that they're capable of simply because they're not certified. Okay? You're going to want to not waste their time with red tape, and you're going to want to find the most advanced technological ways for them to do it. You're going to push the development of robotics. Robotics, okay, are needed on Earth, or can be used on Earth, but they're not felt to be needed on Earth because we have a tremendous labor surplus on Earth. But in a place where people are precious, you find a way to maximize their value. And that's how you create a civilization that treats people like they're worth more than they were before. And that's what we can see in space. Now, our old frontier is closed. And many people have remarked on the increasing bureaucratization of American society. In fact, was predicted by the historians of the frontier as early as the beginning of the century. But we have an opportunity to open a new frontier in space. It's time to open the space frontier. Thank you. I'm asking you to join this campaign. If you haven't already, get a copy of the slideshow. They're on sale in the back, $25. Thanks a lot. I don't know, it's supposed to be an award ceremony soon, but until they come in, I'll take a question or two if there are any. Are there any questions? Okay. Yes, in the back.
Also enrich this particular program. If they want to say focus a little bit more on Mars, or a little bit more on the moon, or a little bit more on energy. So it's not necessarily a closed program.
Right.
It can be expanded out, adapted to the use or the audience of the particular situation.
That point that Fred Ordway, I don't know if everyone heard him, is that this is a pretty broad slideshow. There's a lot of images up there, and people have different takes on this. We don't have a party line here. We have a vision. And if you present this show, you present the points in it that are most important to you. Okay? You may, even exclude certain slides or add a few of your own if you've got some. But the point is, we've got to get out there, we've got to talk to people and mobilize them around this overall vision. Use your own take. I'm not asking you to do it the same way I do it. Do it the way you'll do it, but do it. Yes.
Is there any talk about updating this, continuing updating this?
Well, we will probably update it over time. It is expensive to do these things, and so we'll go with this one for a while before we get a lot of feedback and then update it. But we will update it.
Other than our launch today, will be other information about how to go about approaching Rotary clubs and the Knights of Columbuses or whatever it is. Will there be any other information that we can use, like a checklist of things you need to do or guidelines or?
Well, the main thing you need to do is sort of get into it. Get on the phone, get the guy from the club on the phone, and then tell them you want to talk to them. They say yes, and go down there, and if they find you an interesting speaker, they'll say, have you spoken to the next one? I'll call up Sam for you. Tell him that he should invite you in. I mean, these things, we will be printing up a script. The script is not meant to hold to you word for word. It's a crutch. It's a way to get you started, to give you some ideas of things to say. And that will be available out of headquarters in fairly near future. Though, of course, as you can see, there's also somewhat of a script right on the slides. We may be able to dig up a list. I'm not sure if Rotary publishes it of their club, so you know who to call. But it's just a question of doing it. What? The phone book. Phone book will work.
Your local library.
What?
Your local library.
Your local library.
And Speakers Resource Bureau. List yourself to them. And they also are a source of information on other organizations.
Right. But don't just list yourself in the Speakers Bureau. You got to call these guys up and sort of barge in on them. And schools are always willing to hear from you. And it'd be very important to do this on college campuses. Because look, basically, let me just say something. I'm not sure whether space advocates are a majority or a minority, but the numbers of people who are really very pro-space in this country is extremely substantial. And whether it's 30 million people or 70 million people or 120 million people, it's a lot more than the 25,000 that we have right now. And if you go out there and talk to them, just the fact that you're doing this will make them come up to you and say, what can I do to help? And we can multiply the size and the significance of this movement 100-fold. Other questions? Bob? We need to wrap it. All right, thanks a lot. We can talk some more as the conference proceeds, but I think we've got to go on to the award ceremony. So I'll give it back to Greg.
Thank you very much, Bob. I'd like to now introduce the president of the National Space Society, three-time shuttle payload specialist, Shirley.
Thank you, Greg. I'll move the proceedings up here. And without any further ado, I want to introduce the first presentation of awards. It will be for the National Space Society Chapter Awards. And to make the presentations, I want to introduce Shirley Smith, our U.S. Chapters Coordinator, Craig Ward, Vice President for Chapters of the National Space Society, and Kirby Ikin, International Chapters Coordinator and Board Member.
We have three sets of awards to give out tonight. Unfortunately, we don't actually have the certificates with us tonight, so we will be putting them in the mail after we get back to all of our day jobs. I'm going to be reading the Chapter Excellence Awards. Shirley will be doing the Meritorious Service, and Kirby will read off the Special Merit Awards. The first set are the NSS Chapter Excellence Awards. These are given to chapters by category, to the chapters that conduct activities and programs that perform above and beyond the average standard for chapters in NSS. The first award is presented to Heart of America, Kansas City, for community service in recognition of the exhibit room at the Wonderscope Children's Museum in Kansas City, which the chapter created and featured a 8-foot-tall lunar lander, a remote control miner, computer center, and a lava tunnel, a mineral glove box and fluorescent minerals, meteorites, and cratering equipment, and weight comparison units. The next award is presented to the NSS Southwest Michigan chapter for service to the society. This is given in recognition to the chapter that has done the most to promote an NSS activity. It is for their work during the Apollo 13 campaign. They set up at a movie theater an exhibit and distributed the flyers we had, as did 14 other chapters. And their exhibit included a model space station, the public service announcement from NSS, DCX materials, and other post-space material. The next award is presented to the Langley chapter of the NSS for education, in recognition of their student rocketry program with physics students at Beavis High School in Hampton School District. They launched a 12-foot rocket to 1,331 feet and recovered the rocket and payload satisfactorily. The next award is presented to POW 5 for the Explorer Award in recognition of their project HALO, which stands for High Altitude Liftoff. They have completed the first phase of their program, firing their test engines, and I guess they also launched the first stage of their rocket, and they've also done some test flights of their balloons. The whole idea is to use a balloon to lift up the rocket so it can go farther with less. The next award is presented to the NSS Western Spaceport for publicity in recognition of their efforts to mainstream the issue of space exploration and development with petition signature gathering, promotion of special events, including conferences and the Apollo 13 and Mission Home projects, and appearances on local radio and TV talk shows, and getting opinion pieces published in local newspapers. Presented to the Lunar Reclamation Society for the best newsletter in recognition of their Moon Miners Manifesto. This is currently the longest running chapter newsletter that's serving now 10 chapters across the society. Presented to Middle Tennessee Space Society for media in recognition of their Space TV project. This is the 4th season for Space TV, a 1-hour weekly cable show that promotes public awareness of space activities to a potential Nashville audience of 400,000. The host, Bob Tonini, deserves special recognition. And finally, we have the Chapter of the Year Award. We are giving that to the chapter that has such a range of activities that they just sort of shine out as a cut above all the others for that year. This year, the award is going to San Diego L5 chapter of NSS. They're in recognition for their demonstration of the spirit of space and chapter activism. It is based on the variety and caliber of their efforts, including educational, public advocacy, political activism, social events, fundraisers, sponsorships of events, partnerships, and organizational management.
Announcing the Special Merit Awards. The Special Merit Awards are given to chapters whose programs show exceptional quality and effectiveness. I must say, having participated in last year's awards ceremony, I was rather ashamed into the fact that we didn't have any international chapters being represented. Well, it gives me great pleasure to be announcing the first one, which is for an Australian chapter. I feel a little guilty because it is my own chapter, and it isn't a bit that I chair. Nevertheless, the first award is to Sydney Space Frontier Society for their organisation of the 4th Australian Space Development Conference. The next award is to Orange County Space Society for their space education display at the Orange County Youth Expo. The next award is to Oasis for their Media Thanks Outreach project. NSS of North Texas for their sponsorship of the Southwest Space Development Conference. Beaver Valley Space Education Chapter for their Teachers Resource Kit. Clear Lake Area NSS Chapter for their town meeting on space, Alini, excuse my pronunciation here, Alini Space Development Society for the hybrid rocket project Prometheus, and lastly to Metro Orlando Space Society for their successful efforts to place pro-space opinion editorial commentary in local media.
Meritorious Service Awards are given to chapters that show consistent quality in their activities. It's important that we recognize all of the people across the country and across the world that make a contribution in their communities to advance our goals. So, Ann Arbor Space Society for their Telerobot project, Baltimore Metro Chapter of NSS for their traveling display booth, Central Savannah River Chapter for their continued sponsorship of the Evans High School program, Chicago Society for Space Studies, the Chicago Space Frontier Society, Zero G Destiny Chapter for the Chicago Space Week '95, Colorado Springs Space Society for introducing space resolutions to the state Democratic and Republican Party assemblies, First Arkansas Chapter of the NSS for publicity challenging U.S. Senator Dale Bumpers and his anti-space station rhetoric, Hawaii Space Society for their consistently excellent monthly lecture series, Louisville Chapter of NSS for their elementary education program, Memphis Society for their continuing efforts to establish a Challenger Learning Center, North Coast Chapter NSS for their exhibits at the Erie International Air Show, NSS Northeast Georgia Chapter for colonizing a chapter in Atlanta and providing exhibits to several large science fiction conventions, NSS Southern Oregon Chapter for their media outreach and political action, Northeastern Pennsylvania Chapter for their participation in space advocacy petition drives, Philadelphia Area Space Alliance for putting the ACT into space activism, Rock Valley Space Society for its publication of the chapter newsletter, Geospace Journal, South Dakota Space Society for its Starlab booth at the Siouxland Museum, Sacramento L5 Society for their quality chapter displays at public events, Sheboygan Space Society for their chapter-assisted space study course at Lakeland College, Space Frontier Society of New York City for their excellent series of educational conferences, for initiating the New York City Moon Day Proclamation, and for continuing a series of events, all the while hosting an ISDC this year. Suffolk Challengers for Space for its series of lectures on the accessibility in space to the disabled, Tucson Space Society for its continued co-sponsorship of local science fairs, and Zero G Destiny Chapter of NSS for continued excellence in public outreach.
Those are all the ones we have to give out, but I think it shows that chapters are doing many things well, and we should be glad that they continue to do these things, and we should give them all a big round of applause.
Thank you folks very much. Without their work in coordinating and assisting and recognizing our chapter's contributions, we would be, as an organization, very much less, because most of what we are our chapters. The reason why our chapters are not all that we are is because not every member is a member of a chapter. Let me introduce now for the next award, would be the National Space Society's Headquarters Volunteer Service Awards, is our Executive Director, Lori Garver.
Thank you, Charlie. It has been a number of years now that we have given annually what we call a Headquarters Volunteer Award. For the last several years, this award has not been given to someone within the Washington, D.C. area. This is a new trend, given that we can have volunteers who are doing good work outside our area. This year, we've selected 3 recipients, which is a very good sign. The large number of awards reflects the realization that our volunteers and the caliber of their effort is, in fact, our greatest strength. I'm pleased to recognize this year the editors of the 3 newsletters of the National Space Society. These are all volunteers. First, if I could have them come up, Jeff Bliss, Chicago, Illinois, for his outstanding professional editorial work on our Chapters and Activists publication, Inside NSS. Jeff here, someone better down, I know he was here. Second is Jeff Faust of Cambridge, Massachusetts, for his outstanding editorial work and leadership of the effort that publishes Space Views as a website, as a listserv electronic newsletter, and as a printed chapter newsletter. Wagner of Northampton, Massachusetts, for his outstanding editorial work and initiative which allows the staff to produce a publication for our Society's major donors. There's Jeffrey. I should add that the last 2 of these newsletters are available in their entirety on the internet's web, and the first is available for a $10 annual fee. Where are the awards, Ms. Grant? Well, show your hand. Thank you very much.
Chapters can now subscribe to Inside NSS as a chapter newsletter. We do chapter announcements, and for chapter subscriptions, it's only $8 per person for the year for everybody. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lori, and congratulations to our 3 winners. Now let me introduce Ronnie Lajoie, Huntsville L5 chapter and chapter's assembly chair. Ronnie? Where's Ronnie? Yeah, the chapter's assembly must be still at work. We'll, is Ronnie on his way? Anybody see him outside? Okay, let's, somebody find Ronnie, put him in chains, bring him up front. And we'll move on until he's available.
Give him away for the outcome right now.
All right. The away team is after him. Let me move on to the next presenter, Mark Hopkins, president of Spacecause.
Tonight I'll be presenting 2 awards, one for Spacecause and Spacepac, one for Spacecause and one for Spacepac. These 2 organizations only present 1 award each year, so it's quite special as far as we're concerned. This is the Outstanding Service Award, in this case for 1996, for each of these 2 organizations. The way we decide on these awards is the board of directors of the respective organizations determine this, and individuals who are on the board or officers or employees aren't eligible. So it's really aimed at athletes. The first such award will be the Spacepac Award. And the individual who's going to receive this, he did a substantial amount of work in the last election with regards to raising funds as well as volunteers for the race of his local congressman. He's also been active for a long time in Democratic politics, in a number of statewide elections. For example, at one point, in one election, he raised on the order of $50,000 for his candidate, and has also been in charge in the past of organizing volunteers. At one point, about 200 volunteers for a particular campaign. He is president of his own company, which does marketing, specializes in the computer nets. He's a regional chapters coordinator. He's president and founder of the Southern Oregon chapter. Is already involved in the current race for Senate in his state on behalf of Spacepac. And of course, I'm talking about Brian Lundquist. And unfortunately, he's not going to be here tonight, so I asked Craig Ward to come up and accept the board.
I'm sure Brian will appreciate this. I was asked, I'm told I was supposed to say some things, but I've been so busy here that I haven't had time to do anything. So all I can say is that I'm sure he appreciates it, and it's good to see the people out in the field are getting the recognition they deserve.
The next award is for the Outstanding Service Award for Spacecause. And the individual who is going to receive this award is a long-term chapter activist. He's a former member of the L5 board, former member of the NSS board. He's former editor of the Space Activist Handbook. He's former national coordinator for local Spacepacs. Currently, he is an engineer at what used to be called Bell Labs and has some name which doesn't ring a bell at the moment. He is currently also the associate editor of Spacecause News. And let me tell you what this means, because it's a fairly big deal for Spacecause. What we do is periodically we find topics that we want somebody to write something about that is important. It might be Lunar Prospector, it might be latest thing which is happening with regards to RLV or whatever. And you can't just pull these articles out of the air. So what we do is we call up Dale, and we have him do the research, which can be quite substantial on some of these articles, because sometimes he doesn't know a lot about it, and then write it up for us. And so he produces neat articles on topics that we really want on a sort of a demand basis, which is very useful to me. He's also a past recipient of Spacepac's Outstanding Service Award. When he receives this award, he's the first person in history to receive both the Spacecause Outstanding Service Award and, a prior year, the Spacepac's Outstanding Service Award. And unfortunately, again, he's not here tonight. I'm having bad luck with this sort of thing. But we have accepting for him Joe Redfield. And here he comes.
Well, on behalf of Dale, I really want to thank you for the opportunity to be able to serve in this way and to be able to continue to make contributions. And kind of speaking for Dale here, and we look forward to being able to continue to do this and to continue to make the differences that he's been making.
Well, let me take a couple minutes to tell you about the current big project for Spacecause, which we want your help on. I think everybody in this room is strongly supportive of the reusable launch vehicle in general, single stage orbit type things, and in particular the X-33 project, which, as you probably know, is going to have a phase 2 no-go decision in the distant future. We have, and the reason for this is, as everybody probably already knows, but I'll say it anyway, is because this has the potential of radically reducing space transportation costs by on the order of magnitude, perhaps more. And this is of enormous importance to just about anything we want to do in space, and in particular to our lines and goals and things like space settlements. What we're doing is we're working with Jim Munsey, who is a staffer for Congressman Rohrabacher, And Robacher published an editorial in Aviation Week a few weeks ago pushing this idea, which we're backing up. And we're doing that with letters and phone calls, which we're asking all of you to make. And the target for this particular case will be Vice President Gore. We're selecting him because he's in charge of space for the administration, and because we shot directly to the President Clinton that probably swamped everything else he gets. At any rate, to make the phone call and address, I won't give you that up here. What I suggest you do is hit our webpage, which Spacecause recently put up. You can do that by getting on your web crawler, on the internet, which you can also access directly from AOL, and simply use the keyword Spacecause when you get there. Or alternatively, if you don't have access to the net, call our office in the same building as National Space Society. At any rate, the basic idea is, first of all, thank the Clinton administration for the strong support for this program, because they have done that, and we don't want to annoy them. The second thing is to recommend they go ahead with phase 2 of the RLP project, which isn't going to be a big deal because that's going to happen anyway. What we're really doing is we're setting up for the third thing, and that is we want them to come out in sort of a Kennedy-like fashion with something which announces, because of the promise of the RLP program, really for the first time we're in a position where somebody such as President Clinton can announce the true opening, and it's really nothing less than the true opening of the space frontier. And that's what we're pushing.
Good evening, and I apologize for the delay. My name is Ronnie Lajoie, and I would like to present 2 awards on behalf of the NSS Chapters Assembly. First, I would like to thank my outgoing treasurer, Teresa Holmes, who unfortunately could not be here. I would also like to thank my outgoing secretary, John Strickland, who over the past year has provided much knowledge and guidance for me in my position as chair. Is John here? Yes, please stand and be recognized. By the way, I need the minutes in 2 days. The first award I would like to present is for the Chapters Assembly Outstanding Chapter of 1995. This award goes to the NSS chapter that best served in 1995 as a model for all NSS chapters. This year, the award goes to the NSS of North Texas chapter. In 1995, this chapter held 12 monthly meetings with more than half of its membership in attendance, published 12 monthly newsletters, sponsored a joint dinner meeting with the AIAA, set up a space information table for Astronomy Day, distributed over 3,000 Apollo 13 newspapers, ran a slate of speakers, held a children's space art contest, and set up a space station exhibit during Space Week 1995, and began planning for an NSS Regional Space Conference, which was successfully held this past March. Did I mention that they have only 16 members? Please join me in a round of applause for Carol Johnson and the other members of the NSS North Texas.
I just wanted to recognize him especially too, because a lot of you know him. We're very, very proud to win this award, and I'd just like to encourage other chapters. It shows that if you have a core of active people, you can do a lot, and to not use the excuse that we don't have very many members as a reason not to do anything but get together and have a good time. We have 16 paid members, and
like every chapter, not every single one of our members is an activist, but we do have a lot of people that come to meetings. We have a small core group of people that have gone out and done a lot of things, and we're very proud to win this award, and we'd like to encourage other small chapters to go out. There's a lot that you can do if you just decide to do it. And I'd like to encourage all the other chapters, and I hope another small chapter wins an award like this next year for the years to come. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Carol. The second award I would like to present is for the Chapters Assembly Outstanding Chapter Member of 1995. This award goes to the NSS chapter member who has done the most for the NSS chapter system in 1995. This year, the award goes to Gregory H. Allison, President of the Huntsville, Alabama L5 Society. In addition to his role as president of, in addition to his role as president of a chapter which last year saw a record membership of 42, Greg also served as program manager of HAL 5's Project Halo and chairman of the Foundry. As program manager of Project Halo, Greg assembled and led a team of dedicated amateurs into building a space-capable rocket, which will launch this year on a balloon and reach 50 miles. Greg also has led a team that's when we found him. Greg also led a team of members in the development of an space educational program called Halo Achievement, which will bring to the classroom space education in the same manner that Junior Achievement does for business education. In addition to that, Greg has served as chairman of the Foundry and has successfully developed a program that will enable chapters to develop projects and present them better to the board and hopefully get funding. Greg is obviously dedicated to both the National Space Society and the chapter system. And because of this, Greg is awarded the Outstanding Chapter Member of the Year award.
Thank you very much, Ronnie, and Chapters Assembly members. Basically, I'd like to take up on the position that Carol Johnson said, that there's lots of chapters can do, and we're proving it. If you want ideas about what you can do, come talk to me. I'm full of ideas, and we've got this program and other things. Probably I've got this program, this education program, which would be great for the chapters. There's the Foundry. You can come up with your own project ideas. There are many forums. There's a lot of things out there. You know, there's no use in just sitting around and twiddling your thumbs. If we want to go to space, by golly, we got to make it ourselves. And HAL 5, we're going to pave the road to space and laugh all the way. And that's for Halo.
Next, let me announce the most prestigious award given by the National Space Society. It's the Robert Heinlein Award. The recipient is selected by a vote of National Space Society chapters and NSS members. The award is given for, quote, lifetime achievement in promoting the goal of a free spacefaring civilization, end quote. This is truly a grassroots award and reflects the feelings of a great many of our members. The first 5 recipients were Dr. Gerard K. O'Neill in 1989, Arthur C. Clarke the following year, Dr. Werner von Braun in 91, Gene Roddenberry in 1993, and Robert H. Goddard in 1994. The award was named after Mr. Heinlein due to his effectiveness at promoting knowledge of and interest in space through his many writings and his personal actions. A large proportion of our members, among many others, can trace their personal interest in space and some of their knowledge of space fundamentals to his writings. The cannon that you see on the award that's on the table to my left, the cannon is perhaps the only physical symbol that Mr. Heinlein used as a symbol in his stories. In Heinlein's story, the moon is a harsh mistress. The cannon is a unifying symbol for the anti-colonial revolution that created the independent lunar colony, the Lunar Republic, whose economy ran primarily on lunar resources. The physical award itself consists of a miniature brass naval cannon attached to and mounted on a solid mahogany base with an inlay of black marble. The barrel is inscribed with one of Heinlein's favorite acronyms. Tannstaffel is the pronunciation. The letters stand for "There ain't no such thing as a free lunch." This award recognizes the prominent participation in the Apollo program, but also the recipient's much appreciated years of service to and on behalf of the National Space Society and other organizations in dealing with the present problems and opportunity the space community faces. Tonight, it's my great pleasure to announce that the 1996 Heinlein Award goes to Dr. Buzz Aldrin. Now, I've got to say that I think that it's probably accurate to say that this is the first award that Buzz has gotten that he hasn't picked up in person for decades. And unfortunately, it's the case that it's our award, but according to Lois, Buzz's wife, he has a real good excuse. She managed to pass along the flu bug to him, which has prevented him from taking a red eye here in New York City this weekend. So, we all wish Buzz the very best and the continuation of his multifaceted efforts in his pursuits and in the National Space Society's pursuits, and we'll certainly make sure that Dr. Aldrin receives the award most expeditiously. So again, a round of applause. Now let me continue to announce the Space Pioneer Awards, selected by the National Space Society's Awards Committee. Two of this year's awards have already been presented. The National Space Society's Space Pioneer Award for Mass Media was presented to Jeff Kluger for his co-authorship of the exciting true life drama of the Lost Moon story, Apollo 13. And the second award, which we've already presented, has been the National Space Society Space Pioneer Award for Special Merit. It was presented last night to Dr. Peter Diamandis for the entirety of his many efforts, most especially his creation and leadership in the X Prize Foundation. Tonight we have two awards to present. And the National Space Society Space Pioneer Award for Business Entrepreneur is given to that individual or small company that is actively engaged in groundbreaking work in the area of space development. This award this year is presented to a National Space Society member who is the Vice President for Development of the Celestis, Inc. Celestis is the world's first and only space cremation service provider. They plan to fly their first flight suborbital this autumn aboard an Orbital Sciences Pegasus Taurus launch vehicle. The recipient has been a participant in space development for nearly 20 years. He started out with Jerry O'Neill and the Space Studies Institute as their Washington, D.C. liaison. He then served as Vice President for Government Relations for Space Services, Inc. in Washington, D.C., and working with the late Deke Slayton, he was involved in the first privately financed launch vehicle, the Conestoga 2. He also served as the Washington federal government marketing representative of GeoStar Corp. He has served, in addition, on the AIAA Space Policy Committee and as the Vice President and a member of the Board of Directors of the Institute for Social Science Study of Space. And he has served as a member of the White House Working Group in 1984, which led to the NASA Office of Space Commercialization. He's authored many articles, books, testified before Congress, giving numerous media interviews and lectures widely on the subject of space commercialization. And he is also today a member of the X Prize Foundation Committee. The recipient of this award is recognized for being a leader of the effort to use space as a place to do business. It is my great pleasure to present the Space Pioneer Award for Business Entrepreneur to Charlie Schaefer.
Thanks very much. It's a pleasure to be honored by my peers. I can remember when I was a college student at Georgetown attending National Space Society meetings, and at the time being inspired that there might be an alternative path to space. You have to remember this is before I'm dating myself, but it's before the space shuttle flew. It's really before anybody even really talked about commercial space. And I guess I really only have two things I'd like to share with you tonight. The first is that I accept the award with, at least in spirit, two gentlemen, David Hanna and Deke Slayton, who were true pioneers of the commercial space age and who gave me the privilege of working with them and learning real time about the travails and the challenges and the absolute joy of trying to create that alternative pathway to space. The second thing I'll say is these are indeed exciting times for commercial space. You don't hear that very much these days, but I can tell you business plans are being circulated, substantial funding is being raised for a variety of commercial space programs, be they imagery, be they, in our case, commemorative space flights, be they other kinds of activities, all of which focus on the individual consumer, the mass market. Commerce is a great engine of change. Individuals can truly affect the future, and they can do it through space enterprise. It's happening today. As we hear so much about the decline in federal dollars for space and the great concerns that we all have about that, let's temper those concerns with a little bit of anticipation that as the government perhaps moves away from certain endeavors in space, that truly opens up opportunities for entrepreneurs to fill those gaps. And again, I can assure you that those gaps are today being fulfilled, and that we'll see the fruits of those in a very near term. As was mentioned, I had the privilege of being on the X Prize Committee. We heard a lot about that this weekend. One of the most telling things was to hear Bert Rutan say two things last weekend in St. Louis. The first was that he expected the X Prize to be awarded within 3 years, certainly a time frame that surprised many of us. But secondly, and I think far more interesting, was his statement that, yes, I'm going to compete for it, but I'm not going to tell you what I'm going to do because there are too many people in this room who have other ideas that they're already pursuing, and I don't want that to get out. So I guess my message is take heart. There's a lot of us out there who don't want our ideas to get out until they're appropriate, but there truly is a commercial space age about to dawn. Thank you.
Now it's my pleasure to announce the second Space Pioneer Award tonight that we're presenting here, and it's for Activist of the Year. And it goes to that National Space Society member who has made important contributions to the Space Society or the development of a spacefaring civilization, whichever is most important or most significant, in the past year. This year's recipient has been a National Space Society member and an activist for, and the script says, XX years. I'll let her fill in the blank. She has been active in chapters, served as a board member, edited newsletters for the cause, and most recently has led a very successful effort to introduce space issues to the political party flanks at a regional, state, and national level. It is my great pleasure to announce and to present the Space Activist Award, the Space Pioneer for Activist of the Year, to Marianne Dyson.
on Thursday night, and I said, wow, I really want one of these. I have no idea. Thank you all very much. I really lost for words, as you know. I love space stuff, and pretty much dedicated everything I do in my life to space one way or another. And you know, most of the times, if you're the person who's not there, then they vote you in to do something. But I came to this conference, and the people from Colorado Springs didn't come. And so the Houston bid won for the ISDC in '99. So I'm going to have my hands full for the next few years. And I hope you all be planning to come to Houston in 1999. Thank you very much.
And now concluding, let me thank for the National Space Society, and let me extend that as a thanks from all the other individuals from New York City and the environs that attended this year's conference, to thank Greg Zsidisin, Linda De Laurentiis, Sam Leibovitz, Carolyn Josephs, Steve Wolf, David Milman, and Robert DeBoss, and many, many more volunteers who have worked so hard to make this a successful conference. Now the next year, I'm going to let an individual who knows firsthand what it's been like to get ready for another conference. Let me tell you that he'll be here. He'll be up in just a second to introduce you to next year's conference. And I want to start out that introduction of Mike Gilbrook by saying that I urge you all to plan to go south this time next year, and to be there, attend, participate, and enjoy the 16th International Space Development Conference, which will meet in Orlando, Florida. Michael Gilbrook.
Thank you, Charlie. I'm going to pick this up, otherwise I'm going to have to bend over, and my back wouldn't stand that for very long, I'm afraid. I'd like to start off, before I talk at length about the Orlando conference. We're in the kind of awards mode, so let's continue that for just a second. One of the things that we were doing this weekend out at our registration table with the Milwaukee folks was trying to get some idea of how conference participants felt about some issues that are important as we plan next year's conference. And we offered as an incentive your choice of one of two books that are kind of important to those of us interested in space exploration and development. And Charlie, if I can get you as a disinterested third party to rustle through there and pull out the lucky name.
I'm not good at rustling, but I'll
Give it a go.
give it a go.
Yeah. All right, we have the envelope. The lucky winner of one of these two lovely books is, oh my God, Greg Zsidisin. That would have been too good to be true. But those of you that were at last year's conference will recall I won their survey prize. No, but in fact, the winner is Jeff Faust. You've got one of two books here to pick from, but we've managed to get this one signed by Marshall Savage. This one is unsigned, but Louis Friedman will be here. Louis Friedman will be here tomorrow, so you can even up the score. So it's up to you.
I'll say I have both books at home, and I've read both books, and I've reviewed both books in Spacecause. So I'll just pick somebody else.
What a guy! You know, maybe we should put something really obscure by a Russian writer, because I'm afraid this could go on all night. Okay, before she gets up, I'm going to ask her first if she has both books, read both books, and reviewed both books, and doesn't want either of these books, okay? Charlotte Nelson. Charlotte, where are you? I know you're here, Charlotte.
She was just outside.
Grab her, bring her in, drag her in. This is kind of a repeat of last year because she's part of the Milwaukee group. Come on down. Well, we know where she lives. Charlotte Nelson wins one of these two lovely books. We'll get with her later and figure out which one she wants. But at any rate, we've passed out 100 of these surveys, and we don't have quite 100 here. So if you've got one of these pink forms that you've picked up sometime during the conference, and gee, you kind of meant to turn it in sometime during, please turn it in sometime during either tonight or tomorrow, because the information will be very valuable to us as we try to plan some of the events that we hope to have next year at ISDC 97 in Orlando. Just a few words about next year's conference. I don't want to take too much of your time, but it is in sunny Orlando, in Central Florida. We have a beautiful hotel. Those of you who have looked at our display out here probably noted we are in a brand new hotel, the Omni Rosen, a 5-star hotel. We have an excellent rate, $75 a night, so it's a great opportunity to come down, vacation with your family a few days before and after the conference. We'll be able to maintain that rate for you. Of course, we have all the amenities one expects from Orlando, Florida. You're near the attractions for those days before and after the conference. We don't want you slipping off during the conference, though, because we're going to have some great programming. We plan on doing some programming that we hope will build a sense of mission and community among the National Space Society. As I look around the people here, a lot of you, I've seen you at, I've been going to conferences since '91, so I'm a relative newcomer compared to some of these folks. But I recognize a lot of faces. These are the dedicated. You guys are the core, the people that are really important in this conference year after year. So I expect to see all of you next year in Orlando enjoying our conference programming. Of course, we'll also we'll also be arranging opportunities for you to see Kennedy Space Center, which I know is Mecca to many of the people in this room. So we expect it to be a great conference. I just want to see how many people can I expect, how many of you can I expect to see next year in Orlando, Florida? All right. Great. Now, how many of you do I have a registration form from? Okay, the rest of you, open your wallets before you leave New York City on your way out and sign up one of those registrations. Thank you very much.
And now to close out this evening, I want to invite back up to his podium, Greg's Edition.
Well, it does say the high on the front. Okay. A couple of additional thank yous I want to say before we leave. First of all, I do have some business. The program changes for tomorrow. This will only take about 10 minutes. Seriously, I do want to thank several key people. Charlie thanked most of them. I do want to also extend thanks to Seth Potter, who was instrumental in some of our programming, the ham radio session and the solar power satellite session in particular. I do want to thank Michelle Baker, who's not here, of PASA for setting up the asteroid program. And I do also want to send a very special thanks to headquarters Rob Perlman, who in a matter of 3 or 4 days literally set up the Space Expo program from the existing Spacecause. So I want to thank those people, some of whom may or may not be here. Thanks, guys. This conference would not have at all been possible, and would have left me with much more gray hair than I do have now. If it wasn't for an individual who has in fact put an amazing amount of effort into this, and been an amazing source of information and patience and guidance, I do want to thank very strongly Jeff Bliss, who in fact without whom this conference would not be possible. Jeff, thank you very much for all your effort. I don't see her, but the last person I do want to thank wasn't a volunteer, and in fact spent 3 years also with great patience and perseverance, and providing me with quite a bit of guidance and support. I don't see her, but I do want to thank very much my wife, Elaine Bloom, who in fact wasn't here for most of the conference because she was out giving tours of New York to people, and in fact spent much of the day sleeping in the hotel room. I don't see her, but Elaine, thank you very much for all your support. All right. Final comment, I just want to let you know, thank you all very much for coming out to New York City. It's been a great experience, truly. Although it's ISDCs are a very difficult task, I've been thrilled all weekend to fulfill the dream of having a major spaceflight conference here in New York City, and I hope it'll be the first of many. In fact, some of us in the chapter, a few of us in the chapter, are talking about reapplying for 2000, 2001, so hopefully we'll be doing that. I see some people shaking their heads, some people laughing. Let's see what happens. We'll see if I'm alive after next week. So I hope you'll join us for our future activities, and thank you very much for coming out to New York City to be with us this weekend. Last but not least, I do want to invite each and every one of you to our hospitality suite. We actually have arranged a small get-together. We're meeting downstairs in the Majestic Room. That's basically near operations in the same point. We'll direct you as you get down there. Basically that's a little soiree hosted by the Knights of L5, who once again we thank for another year of support, as well as our local chapter. Thank you very much, and hope to see you downstairs. And also hope you'll visit the art exhibit, which will be open downstairs as well. Thank you very much.